There are a lot of myths about veganism, but there are pearls of wisdom as well. From advocating healthy living, to the moral treatment of animals, to sociological aspects of a plant-based diet, veganism is a viable lifestyle choice. Gene Baur is co-founder and president of Farm Sanctuary, a national nonprofit organization that works to end cruelty to farm animals and change the way society views and treats farm animals. He was a pioneer in undercover investigations and instrumental in passing the first U.S. laws to ban inhumane factory farming practices. He has written 2 national best-selling books, Farm Sanctuary and Living the Farm Sanctuary Life. Gene has been vegan since 1985 and recently started competing in marathons and triathlons, including an Ironman, to demonstrate the benefits of plant-based eating. I'm here with Gene Baur, co-founder and president of Farm Sanctuary. Hi, Gene. How are you?
It's great to be here. Thank you very much.
Thank you for coming. So I never knew before going vegan what farm sanctuaries were. All children are led to believe that all farms are like sanctuaries, right? And that animals are well taken care of. But as we know now, that's not the case. So what is the true farm sanctuary life?
Well, living the farm sanctuary life is living in a way that is kind to animals, kind to ourselves. We encourage people to eat plants instead of animals because what happens to animals on these factory farms is atrocious. They're put in small cages, small crates, they're abused. We found living animals thrown in trash cans. And that's how Farm Sanctuary started, by rescuing these animals. And once they come to Farm Sanctuary, they get to live out their life. We get to spend time with them, and we get to enjoy their company. So at Farm Sanctuary, animals are our friends, not our food, and being vegan is normal.
So what was your goal in writing your book, Living the Farm Sanctuary Life?
I wrote Living the Farm Sanctuary Life with the idea of inspiring and encouraging people to make food choices that are aligned with their own values and aligned with their own interests. In our country, we eat food that makes us sick. It's irrational if you look at it from the outside, but it's something that we do out of habit. We have these bad habits. So I just want people to recognize that we can choose to eat plants instead of animals, which is good for the animals, it's good for the environment, and it's also good for us. So Living the Farm Sanctuary Life has 100 amazing vegan recipes and advice and tips for going towards plant-based eating.
Where did your journey begin, and was it gradual?
For me, going vegan was incremental. My first inkling of the abuses of animals on farms was when my grandmother told me about how veal calves are raised, chained by the neck in these small wooden crates for their whole lives. And then in college, I started learning more about factory farming and about the inefficiency of animal agriculture, how it requires enormous amounts of land and water and other resources to grow corn and soybeans and other feed crops to feed farm animals. And I learned that we could feed something like 10 times more people on plant-based agriculture as opposed to animal agriculture. So it was wasteful, it was inefficient, it was cruel, and ultimately it was unhealthy for us. So when I learned that it was possible to live without killing and eating other animals, I went vegan in 1985, and it's one of the best decisions I've ever made.
How much of a role does habit and custom play in apathy toward our food system?
You know, I think we are creatures of habit, and we do things that we grow up doing, and we develop these patterns of behavior, and we don't really think very much about them, and that just becomes the norm. And if you look at human history, there have been a number of institutions and behaviors that we now look back on and are appalled by. And certain things, had been defended and considered to be normal. And I think at some point we're going to be looking back on today and saying, how could we have been so bad to other animals? How could we have supported the system that was so harmful? And it's really basically habits. We're creatures of habit. We're also social animals. So if everybody around us is doing something, we start doing it, often without thinking about it. So habits are oftentimes an impediment to progress. And I think it's important for us to be ultimately critical thinkers and then mindful in the way we approach the world.
Cruelty-free is not only about food, but about what you wear. So what is the best way someone can become aware of their fashion and knowing that an animal hasn't been harmed in the making of it?
I talk a little bit about that in Living the Farm Sanctuary Life, but there's also lots of information online. You can just Google, wool, for example, or Google fur, and it's obvious that fur is coming from animals who were killed and skinned. So the more we can go towards plant fibers and away from animal-based fibers, the better. And that's usually the best advice, but there's a lot of information online now.
And what kind of advice would you give to someone that says, I need to get to a farm sanctuary right now?
Come on over. Check out our website, farmsanctuary.org. We'd love for people to come visit. We have animals that are huge, like 500-pound pigs, for example, but they act a lot like puppy dogs in some cases. Our pigs love belly rubs, so you walk up to them, you touch the tummy of a 500-pound pig, they flop over for a belly rub.
I hear that, yeah, they make great pets, and I mean, I'm hearing more and more people adopting pigs now instead of dogs.
They're companions, but you
not
need
pets,
to have
companions. Sorry.
Yeah. And you also want to be sure you have the space, because sometimes people will, adopt a pig or bring a pig into their home, and if they don't have the proper wherewithal and the facilities, they sometimes end up calling us saying, hey, can you take our pig? So it's important for people when they are going to bring an animal into their home, whether they're a dog or a cat or a pig or a turkey or a cow. And in the case of cows and pigs and turkeys, for example, you probably need more than a house. You need some acreage, and oftentimes people who adopt from us have barns and those sorts of facilities, which are important for larger farm animals. Too often when we human beings interact with farm animals, it's been a violent, inhumane interaction. And I think of people that work on these farms, and I feel bad for the animals. I also feel bad for the people. Could you imagine what it would be like to work in a slaughterhouse, for example, and to have to kill animals one after the other all day long? That does something to you.
Psychologically. Definitely.
Absolutely. Kindness to animals is good for people too. Cruelty to animals takes its toll, and it, I think, takes away part of our empathy, part of our humanity. And that's a very important part of who we are. If we don't have empathy and concern for others, I think we lose a lot of ourselves.
That's exactly right. We need to be compassionate to animals if we want to also be, living in a compassionate world.
Compassion can become contagious, and it can spread, just as violence and cruelty can become contagious and can become the norm. But if more and more people start living with kindness and compassion to animals and to people, then that starts becoming more normalized, and it can spread.
The website?
farmsanctuary.org.
Beautiful. Thank you so much for coming.
Absolutely. Thank you very much.
Stay with us.